The room fell silent in a way that felt almost painful. 12 highly paid experts, people with degrees from the world's best universities, had just failed to solve a problem that was costing the company millions every hour. Screens glowed across the sleek conference room. Charts filled with red numbers flickered on the walls, and the CEO's face had hardened into a look of quiet desperation. Then, from the far corner of the room, a soft voice spoke up. It belonged to a man no one had noticed before, a janitor holding a mop, wearing worn shoes and a faded uniform, a single father who quietly spoke 8 languages. Before we begin this incredible story, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Kindness if you believe in kindness and second chances, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from today. Your support keeps stories like this alive. The headquarters of Orion Global Tech was known for brilliance. The building was a towering monument of glass and steel, filled with some of the brightest minds in the world. Inside, people walked quickly through polished hallways, discussing algorithms, logistics, and multi-million-dollar contracts. To them, every second mattered. Yet there was one person who moved through the building almost invisibly. His name was Daniel Reyes. Every night, long after the executives left and the lights dimmed, Daniel quietly pushed his cleaning cart through the halls. His routine was simple and humble: empty trash bins, wipe desks, polish floors, and leave before sunrise. Most people barely noticed him. To them, he was simply the janitor. But Daniel's life had once been very different. Years earlier, Daniel had been a translator and logistics specialist who worked across different countries. His ability to speak languages had opened doors most people never even saw. Spanish, English, French, German, Mandarin, Arabic, Portuguese, and Italian flowed naturally for him, each learned through years of travel, work, and curiosity. But life has a way of rewriting even the most promising stories. When Daniel's wife passed away suddenly after a short illness, his world collapsed overnight. Grief struck him like a storm he couldn't escape. At the same time, caring for his young daughter Sophia became his only priority. The demanding international career he once had was no longer possible. Travel was out of the question. The endless meetings and contracts meant nothing compared to being there for his child. So Daniel chose stability over prestige. The janitor position at Orion Global Tech offered steady hours and a schedule that allowed him to pick Sophia up from school every day. It wasn't glamorous, it didn't use his skills, but it kept food on the table and gave his daughter the father she needed. And so, night after night, Daniel quietly cleaned the offices of people whose work he fully understood but never participated in. Then came the crisis. Orion Global Tech had just secured a massive international contract involving multiple countries and complex shipping logistics. The deal was supposed to bring enormous profits. Instead, it turned into chaos. A critical miscommunication between several international partners had frozen the entire operation. Documents had been mistranslated, shipment codes didn't match customs regulations, agreements written in different languages conflicted with each other. Millions of dollars were being lost every hour the system stayed frozen. The company gathered 12 of its best consultants and specialists in a high-level emergency meeting. These experts analyzed documents, contracts, and data streams for hours. Screens filled with notes, diagrams, and attempted solutions. But every fix created another problem. The tension in the room grew heavier with each passing minute. The CEO, Margaret Lawson, was a woman known for her calm leadership, but even she could feel the pressure building. Investors were calling. Partners were demanding answers. The company's reputation hung in the balance. And still, no solution. Late that evening, while the meeting dragged on into exhaustion, Daniel entered quietly to clean the hallway outside the conference room. He worked slowly, careful not to disturb anyone. Through the glass wall he could see the screens. At first he tried to ignore them, but as he passed again, his eyes caught something familiar. One of the documents displayed on the screen was written in Portuguese, but the translation beside it was clearly wrong. A small phrase had been interpreted incorrectly, changing the entire meaning of a shipping agreement. Daniel paused. He told himself it wasn't his place. He continued mopping. But then he saw another document in German that had the same issue, and another in Mandarin with a misunderstood logistical term. Years of experience made the problems painfully obvious. Inside the room, the experts were debating complicated theories, completely unaware that the root issue was simply language. Daniel stood there for a long moment, wrestling with doubt. Who would listen to a janitor? Finally, as the meeting reached a point of complete frustration, he quietly knocked on the door. At first, no one even looked up. But when the door opened slightly and the janitor stepped in, the room reacted with confusion. Daniel felt every pair of eyes on him, but he gathered his courage and explained that he might have noticed something about the translations. Some people looked annoyed. Others looked skeptical. But the CEO, desperate for any new perspective, allowed him to continue. Daniel calmly walked toward the screen and began pointing out the mistakes. He explained that a Portuguese phrase had been translated too literally, missing its commercial meaning. He then clarified a German logistics term that had been misinterpreted in the contract. Finally, he showed how a Mandarin expression used in shipping negotiations had been incorrectly translated, creating the appearance of conflicting requirements. As he spoke, the room grew completely silent. The experts who had spent hours analyzing the issue suddenly realized the problem had been right in front of them. One by one, the corrections began aligning the documents. Within minutes, the entire chain of confusion started unraveling. What seemed like a massive, logistical disaster was actually a series of small translation errors spreading across multiple languages. The solution was surprisingly simple once the languages were properly understood. The system restarted. Shipments resumed. Millions of dollars in potential losses disappeared almost instantly. The CEO stared at Daniel with disbelief and curiosity. How had a janitor solved a problem 12 experts couldn't? When she asked about his background, Daniel reluctantly shared pieces of his past, his years working internationally, the languages he had learned, and the life he left behind to raise his daughter after losing his wife. The room that once overlooked him now looked at him with something entirely different. Respect. In the following weeks, Daniel's story spread quietly through the company. People who once walked past him without noticing now greeted him warmly. The executives realized they had overlooked a man with extraordinary knowledge simply because of the uniform he wore. Margaret Lawson offered Daniel a new position within the company's international communications department. It came with a salary that would completely transform his life. But what mattered most to Daniel wasn't the title. It was the stability it would bring for Sophia. For the first time in years, he felt that the difficult choices he had made, the sacrifices, the silent nights, the humble work, had all led somewhere meaningful. Sometimes life hides extraordinary people in ordinary places, and sometimes the quietest voice in the room carries the answer everyone else missed. Before we reach the end of this story, we have a small special request for you. Please take a moment to comment the word kindness if you believe people deserve to be seen for who they truly are, not just the roles they appear to play. Months later, Daniel still walked through the same building, but now he did so with a sense of belonging rather than invisibility. His daughter Sophia proudly told her friends that her father worked with languages around the world, and every time Daniel looked at her smiling face, he knew that the hardest years of his life had not been wasted. They had simply been preparing him for the moment someone finally listened. And if this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Kindness. Your support helps these powerful stories reach people who may need a little hope today. Because sometimes the greatest talent in the room is the one no one thought to notice. And sometimes all it takes